Hi, this is Greg Dietz from Lancaster Catholic. I just wanted to pass along the presentation that we had put on a few weeks ago when we had counselor night. We had done PSAT score give back, and then we talked a little bit about the college planning process. So I wanted to make sure you got that information if you weren't able to attend. So a little bit about what we talked about. In terms of this presentation, we mainly focused on those students who are planning on going to college. There were some 10th grade families there, mostly 11th grade families, just to give an introduction to this material so that as you and your students start to think about what their plan looks like for senior year and beyond, you kind of know what to expect. I can tell you that the counselors are meeting with all of the juniors, so there's a good chance your junior may have been seen already. If not, they will be seen very soon. So the first thing I want to talk about is testing, and this is something that a lot of people have questions about, the SAT and the ACT. I can tell you that schools don't have a preference on which test a student will take, but here are the upcoming test dates. You can see this February date has passed. The March 9th test, the regular deadline was February 8th, but there is a late registration deadline for that as well. There's also an SAT date on May 4th. Be warned, though, that is the day after prom, so it's not quite the most popular test for our students to take. And then again on June 1st. You can see the ACT test dates and deadlines over here. Still time for that April test, and then we have one in June, and they also actually offer one in July. So my general piece of advice, if your student is currently taking Algebra 2, they should wait until that June test to take it. If your student might be below Algebra 2, again, you're going to want to wait until at least that June test to take it. The SAT goes up through Algebra 2 material, so if they wait until June to take it, they'll have seen the bulk of that material. If your student has already taken Algebra 2, they're free to take that test whenever they want. But generally, regardless of which test they want to take, we recommend that students take at least one test in their junior year and then take a test again in their senior year. If they want, they can take one of each of the SAT and the ACT and decide which one they like better and take that test again in senior year. But again, colleges don't care which test you take. It's all a matter of preference. The one big difference is the ACT has a science section on it. Some people ask about SAT subject tests and do I need to take them? If you look at the presentation that I sent in an email, you'll be able to click a link that says, do I need subject tests? You could even just Google that. And the College Board provides a list of schools who it's an optional thing that you can send, it's a recommended thing that you do, or a required thing that you do. So as your student is starting to put together a list of schools, compare against that list to see if it's a school that does require an SAT subject test. And here you can see what all those different subjects are that they could take those in. These SAT subject tests are taken on the same test day as the regular SAT. If a school says that they are test optional, this means that students do not need to send a standardized test score in with their application. The general rule of thumb, if a school is test optional, if you look at that school's overall test average and your student is meeting that test average or exceeding it, I would say go ahead and send those scores. If your student is below their test average, I would say hold off on sending those scores since they're giving you the option. Colleges, if they're giving you that option of test optional, it doesn't hurt your application if you're not going to send it in. So that's kind of a general rule of thumb that we use for test optional. I will say that some schools still have some financial aid that is tied to test scores. So certain scholarships might require that an SAT meets a certain number or an ACT meets a certain number. So if you do go test optional, it might limit some of those financial aid opportunities. But if you're looking at it and you're like, I'm just not sure I'm going to get in because I'm not hitting that average, then I would go the test optional route. So now it's time to start to figure out what is the right school for a student. And this is something that we're going to be talking to the juniors about a little bit later on, because most juniors that are applying to college, they don't have a full school list yet. So it's pretty hard to identify what a reach is, what a target is, what a safety is. But as students start to explore a little bit and they do a college search such as Naviance's Supermatch or Naviance's Advanced College Search, if they start to pinpoint schools that they think they might be interested in, they need to determine if it's a reach, a target, or a safety. I think these are pretty self-explanatory, but a reach school is one you're not sure you're going to get into, whether that's because you don't quite have be you're not quite meeting the average GPA, you're not meeting the test scores. It could be a reach because it's far away from home. It could be a reach because you're not quite sure if you could afford it. It's okay if you have 1 or 2 reach schools, but we don't want every school to be a reach. A target school is exactly what it sounds like. It's right smack dab. It's like a Goldilocks school for you. So for a target school, you're meeting their academic requirements. You're comfortable with where it's located. You like the campus, so that would be a target school. You're pretty sure you can afford it. And then a safety school, that's a school that you know 100% you're going to get into that school. Maybe it's the most affordable option. Maybe it's an option that's the closest to home. So the important thing to note is that reach, target, and safety is going to be different from one student to the next. So it's up to each student to figure out where do their schools fall. In general, I recommend that students are going to apply to maybe 1 or 2 reach schools. You don't have to have a reach, but 1 or 2 reach schools, 2 or 3 target schools, and 1 or 2 safety schools. So in general, you're looking about 4 to 7, somewhere around there, 4 to 6 schools. All right, so what are admissions reps looking for? You can see over here on the right side, these are the big things that they want. They're looking at your grades, GPA, that's most important, a rigor of the school curriculum and the rigor of the classes that a student is taking, then followed up by test scores, writing supplements, recommendations. You can see class rank is very low on this list. It's much more telling to see how a student is performing compared to how they're doing against their peers. Because they're not admitting everybody's peers, they're just admitting that student. So that's why GPA reigns king. So it's also important for students to know how schools are getting to know them. So we like to divide this up into calling schools holistic or mechanical. Mechanical, most of the large colleges, when I say large, I'm thinking of those flagship state research institutions like Penn State, Alabama, UNC. Those large colleges get so many applications that they don't have time to sift through every single piece of material that you send them. So they're really going to be heavily reliant on those test scores and your GPA. A holistic school, so a smaller school, more selective schools, they want to get to know you fully as a person. So they're going to look at those activities, they're going to read that resume, maybe they'll take a music sample from you, maybe they'll take a look at an art portfolio even though you aren't going to be an art major, because they want to take all of that into account when they're making an admissions decision. So just kind of keep that in mind too. These larger colleges, it might be a little bit more mechanical, very much black and white as to who they're going to admit. So once students actually make their list of schools, we need to figure out how are they going to apply. And most times, students are going to be applying with an electronic app through that school's website or the Common App, which I'll talk about a little bit here in a minute. And Naviance can help students with this. So as you can see in this sample school list, Catholic University of America, they're strictly a Common App school as designated by this icon right here. Penn State, this says that they have their own application, which they do, but they're also now a Common App school as well. And you can see here for St. Joe's and Ohio State, there's a question mark. This means that they have an electronic application through their website that you can do, or you can use the Common App. So you have a couple options there. So the Common App and the Coalition App, I want to talk about these quickly. The Common Application and the Coalition, this is one application that you use to apply to multiple schools. I can tell you that in the past 2 or 3 years since the Coalition launched, I've done maybe a handful of applications with the couple hundred students that I've worked with through the Coalition. The large majority of my students are using the Common Application. This is really great because you do your application one time and send it out to multiple schools at once. The only differences between schools are, number one, the application fee. You still have to pay that per school. And there might be some different requirements that they have in terms of writing or specific school questions that they want answered. But those are generally much shorter things. So you're going to want to use one of these applications if you have 2 or more schools using this platform. Really, really great time saver for students. It makes applying much easier. So in terms of the writing requirements, we want students with their college essay to be unique, excuse me, in the stories that they're telling. Their college essay is going to be about 2 pages, and the great thing about Lancaster Catholic is that all seniors are going to write a college essay in their senior English class. So some students do really want to jump on the ball and get that essay written before they come back to school, and that's perfectly fine, but please know that they're also going to be working on that in English class. So you can actually go online right now and search Common App essay topics, and for the 2019-20 school year, they're already posted. So if students want to get an idea of what they might be asked as an essay question, or they want to start thinking about it, they can go ahead and do that. So you can see the differences between an essay and a personal statement listed here. An essay is generally a little bit longer, and they're going to give you a specific essay question, whereas a personal statement is a little bit shorter, and you're answering who are you and why should you be admitted to our school. We always encourage our students also to get those essays edited and proofread by someone at home, by a counselor, by a teacher, not by a friend. All right, so the other thing to note is that the average application fee is about $50. So this is why we really encourage students to only apply to those schools they're interested in, because if a student applies to 10 schools right there, that could be $500 just in submitting those applications. So this can get to be a very expensive process. So the more we can target students on the schools that they're interested in, we can try to bring those costs down a little bit. So once a student has actually submitted their application, there's just a couple more things they need to do in order to get a college the paperwork that they need. Number one, and probably most important of that paperwork, is the transcript. This is going to have the final grade averages for grades 9 through 11 for all of the classes that a student has taken at Lancaster Catholic, or if they happen to transfer in from somewhere else, those grades will be on there as well. So this way a college can look and get a quick snapshot and see that GPA, the class rank, and they can also see the rigor of the courses that a student is taking and how they did. It's a really easy way for them to see what kind of student the individual has been over the first 3 years of high school and give them an idea of how they're performing academically. So that's the transcript. Those are all requested through a student's Naviance account, and that's something that we'll walk students with next year as they come back as seniors. Students will also have to send test scores. Typically, these have to come directly from the testing website, whether that's the College Board for SAT or AP, or the ACT website. If a student is registering for an upcoming test, typically this doesn't happen too much in junior year, but when they come back for senior year, if they're registering for an upcoming test and they have some schools they know that they're going to apply to, they can send those test scores for free to up to 4 schools. And they're going to go automatically, so that's really nice. But the most important thing in this is that the counseling office typically cannot send test scores for you. Every once in a while an admissions office will ask us for that, and we do our best with it, but they specifically have to ask us for it. We will not send them because most times colleges will not take score reports from us. In terms of letters of recommendation, every school is going to be a little bit different. Some schools don't want any letters of recommendation. Some schools will say they need 1. Some schools will say, hey, you can send us 7. So students will request these letters either the end of junior year or the beginning of senior year from teachers. And teachers will upload these letters through Naviance directly to the colleges, and counselors can take care of uploading those letters directly as well. So again, that's something we'll worry about more towards the end of this year into next year. Part of letters of recommendation is this law, which is FERPA. This law states that students have access to their educational records. So basically, a letter of recommendation is considered to be an educational record. So a student has to indicate whether or not they waive their FERPA rights when they're looking at their college applications for letters of recommendation. So if a student says, yes, I waive my rights, this means they will not look at their letters before they're sent. No means I will look at my letters. Colleges typically prefer that students waive these rights so they know that they're getting truthful and honest letters from the teachers. And finally, financial aid. Again, this is something that we really focus on more in the fall of senior year, so I don't want to overwhelm you too much with this right now. This information pertained to a point earlier in this year, but we will have a financial aid night for you next fall, right before back to school night. We will have a FAFSA completion night. This is a financial aid form that's submitted to the federal government and then sent out to colleges. We'll have a night where you can come in and have a representative from the state help you to complete your FAFSA. That'll be in November. And then this is always a big question: when do scholarships start? Local scholarships come online or come to us typically in the winter time around January, February. Online scholarships, students can start looking in the summer. But financial aid is something, it's definitely, you want to keep it in mind. How much does the school cost? But we'll worry about that more in the fall of senior year. So again, I know this was a quick snapshot of what this looks like. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to your student's counselor. and we look forward to guiding you and your student through this process as we head into senior year.